Hello, YouTube. Today I'm going to be talking about Elite Dangerous Engineers, or Release 2.1 in the Horizons season. Will it be enough to bring people back and kind of quash some of the complaining that has been rampant over the past few months, especially thanks to this delay? Now, my personal feelings on the delay were they were well explained, well reasoned, and here we are about 8 weeks later, and they are delivering pretty much more or less on schedule and what they promised. They basically came out and said, look, we've gotten how people play these games wrong. It didn't meet with our expectations. We have hard data now that basically shows that people do the same repetitive tasks over and over again instead of exploring the greater game universe as we had originally anticipated. Therefore, we're going to be changing some core systems, in particular with the missions, in order to try to broaden that engagement of the player base. All of that is excellent because that shows that they are listening. It may not be exactly what some people want to hear, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be enough to quash at least some of the levels of dissent that you see within the Elite Dangerous community. Basically, I think that's going to boil down to which side of the ideological expectation divide you were, whether you were wanting Eve 2.0 with cockpits or wanting an experience more or less what Elite Dangerous has shaped up to be. Now, if you're on the latter end of that spectrum, you should be ecstatic by what is being put in 2.1. If you're more towards the Eve 2.0 with cockpits dynamic, I think they're going to continue to be basically disenfranchised and disappointed. In fact, many, I think, that are more on that end of the spectrum is already saying that it's basically more grind with a slot machine in terms of a random number generator for loot. And to them, that style of gameplay is just absolutely disappointing and not what they're wanting at all. However, I will say with 2.1, the universe is for the first time really starting to feel alive with things like the space traffic control. Being a real life pilot and enjoying flight sims, that tickles me to death to go fly into a station now and hear Falcon DeLacy Sierra Kilo uniform heavy because I'm flying an Anaconda announced from the starport when I request docking and in the number of the landing pad I'm supposed to be going to, and the reminders from space traffic control, which I think helps more than anything, especially in early morning gaming sessions when my brain has shut off, to remember to request docking before approach. To me, that's starting to add a breath of life to the universe that frankly has been sorely missing over the past year with just very limited text interactions with NPCs and the game world at large, even if you're playing in small private groups or in solo play. The other thing is the AI has become a hell of a lot more challenging, which I think is fantastic, and I hope it stays dialed up to 11. Or maybe to address kind of this conundrum that has been around for the past year of the solo versus private group versus open play, is maybe they need to use that to where if you're playing in solo mode, the AI is dialed up to 11 to where they're as big of a threat to you as players are. Maybe even more of a threat to you than PvP. Because believe me, I took out first a trade conda and then a combat fitted conda and found out in both cases AI are no longer a joke. They're no longer a pushover. Before, with an A-rated Anaconda, I could just pretty much take on anything in the universe without having to worry too much unless you go into a combat zone and you just completely get ganged up on by 20 NPCs. Not so much here, where I had basically a NPC FTL mirroring what I see in terms of PvP behavior. They would interdict me, I would jump out. They would jump right back out and interdict me again. Chase me down to a planet's surface. Things of that nature. Basically, I couldn't escape the NPC unless I either jumped out of the system, and even then, I think I had one of them follow me to the next system, or I stood and basically fought my ground. But one of the times I was standing there fighting at my ground against, I think, a wing of 3 or 4 vultures, they knocked out my thrusters almost immediately. I couldn't run. And every time that I tried to reboot or repair, as soon as my thrusters came online, I would be charging my FTL and they would knock out my thrusters again, or they would knock out my power plant. And I'm just like, oh man, this is just nasty. I can't wait to read the comments on the forums of how the folks who thought they were playing Elite Care Bear are getting absolutely raped by NPCs. And maybe that's kind of a condition of playing in solo mode now. You have to play against these harder NPCs. More at than if you're in a private group, maybe they dial that back from 11 to 10, and then if you're playing in open, maybe they dial it back to 8 or 9, depending, to where, you do have the risk of running into players that can range the gambit from complete noobs that don't know how to fly their ships to elite PvPers, as a way of encouraging people to get out of their comfort zone and into open play. I don't know if Frontier will go down this road or not. I suspect probably not at this juncture in time, but this new revised AI shows that they certainly could implement something like that down the road, and that is exciting to see. However, the one thing that Frontier really needs to take a deep look at, and I hope that they are for Season 3, it's not going to happen this year. I have no illusions. They've kind of set out the roadmap from this year, and I'll be excited to see things like being able to do multi-crew, the character generator, and things like that. But in Season 3, they do need to give players more of a way to interact with the background sim more or less directly instead of this indirect method that they have now, where you have basically two competing goals, and whichever player group can herd enough cats, as it were, to do goal A versus goal B, and whichever one at the end of the cycle, the end of the turn, has a higher point total is the one that wins out. Unless both of them get above a certain threshold, then they nullify and cancel each other's actions out. I don't think people like to necessarily see that level of interaction on the universe. Having that mechanic work for certain functions are fine, but I really think that what people want to see is starting to have more of a direct impact on the universe as a whole. Even if we're not getting to quite player-owned stations or player-owned space that many of the EVE 2.0 with cockpit peoples desire in the bottom of their hearts, but a system to where, let's say me and some of my friends decide to start mining in a system that is otherwise uninhabited. Well, after a week or two of this, maybe a couple of cycles, and there should be probably some sort of tick-based mechanic there because not everybody can play every day, but then an outpost pops up, either on a planet or in space. And then as you start trading with that outpost, it starts to grow and expand, and maybe a month later, it's gone from an outpost to a small Orbis space station. And then 3 or 4 months down the line, it's grown into a bigger station, so on and so forth. Now, they've mentioned doing this in the past, but they've not been able to automate that process apparently into the background sim as of right now. If they want to relocate a station like Jacques Station, they have to do it during a maintenance server downtime and basically update the server on the back end and say Jacques Station is no longer at this location, delete that, and now it is at Beagle Point, 65,000 light years away, as one of the community goals right now that are underway to do just that. I think if we can start having a direct impact on that, or a more in-depth crafting system, or I should say materials tree for production at these space stations, let's say I start bringing in minerals A, B, and C. It'll start producing widget 1 in higher quantities. If I bring in materials X, Y, and Z, it starts producing more of widget 2. And therefore, if it's producing more of those items, it decreases its price because, of course, there's more things there in the market. Then I can buy those reduced priced items and go trade with another station in another system and make more profit that way. Basically encouraging groups of players to work together in order to achieve higher profit margins overall. Now, I think that there would also have to be a little bit more social mechanics in terms of being able to share profit, whether it's some sort of guild mechanic and you guys do this and then contribute to a guild bank or something like that. It's something that I think needs to be looked at, because while not everybody wants EVE 2.0 with cockpits, there are certainly demographics that wants to have a more direct impact on the universe around them. And the argument is, with 400 million star systems, or billion star systems, or zillion star systems, whatever it is within the Elite Dangerous universe, we have more than enough space to allow some of these mechanics to unfold, even if it's, say, not capable of doing so in the directly inhabited bubble. Maybe this is a way to expand the bubble, and maybe they do have this on the horizons down the road, but it's not going to be there for seasons 3 or 4. Again, I hope they start thinking about this in Season 3, because I think that's going to be the make or break moment for the game as a whole for the next decade. If they put it off to Season 4 or 5, I don't know if they're going to be able to build and maintain the interest for that, especially with so many other space games coming online that may or may not offer those features directly. And maybe that ends up happening. Maybe that's the different strokes for the folks who are wanting that, and they go play those games instead of playing Elite Dangerous. But it's just kind of my thoughts on the subject. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to tell me what you guys think about 2.1 if you've played it yet, if you haven't, or what you're thinking about these changes to the game in the comments section down below. Till next time, see you in the verse.